Man 2 brings in a lot of new plot arcs for Tony Stark because now the world knows that he is Iron Man, so let's talk about it. Hello everyone, I hope you're having a cinematastic day. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema, and today we're going to be covering Iron Man 2 and continuing the MCU franchise review series. Let me know your thoughts on this movie down in the comments below. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Or is it somewhere in the middle? Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, if you find it insightful. Also make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming videos, including the rest of the MCU review series. If you missed the start of this series, be sure to check out the cards right there with Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. But without further ado, let's begin. After the world discovers he is Iron Man from the events of Iron Man 1, we get all of these pressures and stakes that he has to go up against as the military wants his act. The government is wanting control of him and not wanting his weaponry to go in the wrong hands. And meanwhile, we're getting some new threats from Justin Hammer and Ivan Vanko. Starting off with a positive, this movie covers a lot of different plot elements, which is kind of good in a way as it sort of covers a basis of different things. Tony with his father, Whiplash, Justin Hammer, and just introducing Black Widow, sort of leading up to Avengers. It does detract a little bit from the film, but it still does impressively capture a lot of different story elements. It has the introduction of Black Widow, which she has a lot of cool fight scenes, especially like with the hallway scene near the end. Her character was used a little bit less, but it's still good enough. And Whiplash and Justin Hammer as the villains are really good introductions. There's more to the negatives later on, but I do think their acting is satisfactory and really good at times for what they're doing in this film. And Whiplash in the racetrack scene and also in the final battle is very exciting just to see that all play out. I really enjoy what that is. And of course, Robert Downey Jr. as always plays really well both as Iron Man and as Tony Stark. His chemistry just works well with all the characters around him. And out of all of the plot elements that they cover in this film, the subplots, I honestly like the father Iron Man or father Tony Stark relationship the most. Discovering more about his father, who he's meant to be, who he's trying to call to be, and just having to deal with that as when he's also having to deal with all of these other troubles in the film. And like during that montage when he's creating a new suit or creating a new arc reactor, which was really cool. There's a little Captain America shield cameo tease, and I really do enjoy that part of it. And just the montage in general of creating that arc reactor was fun. I really enjoyed the soundtrack within that and throughout the film. It's not one of the best, but it's still very fitting for what they're doing. As it goes into the final battle, I just really enjoy that part. The first team up between Iron Man and the War Machine, Rhodey finally getting to bear on the suit, getting to get it. And I know it's Don Cheadle and it's not Terrence Howard, as it was kind of disappointing Terrence Howard never got to put on the suit, but it was still really fun getting the chemistry there. That's where it really worked the most. And fighting against all those drones, against the Whiplash, it was just really enjoyable seeing all the fighting and effects that they had on there. And I remember the first time watching this, like, I didn't really expect all those different sort of small twist going into it. It's not super surprising, but it does have some good professionalism to it that makes me really sort of enjoy that final fight scene. Moving on to the negatives, so I do really think Jon Favreau really needed a lot more time to balance out the plot to create this movie, because they were sort of trying to push it to get out there and by 2010, and it didn't quite end up so well. As I said, there was quite a bit of positives, but in some ways, some of those positives are a little mixed, have some negative elements on them with the plot, as it does cover so much and as it's so kind of impressive that it can cover that much. Not every single subplot can be concentrated on well enough that it's engaging enough for the audience, engaging enough to really understand each part individually. I think Tony and his father scene was done the best, but it was still a fairly small portion of this film to where it fit in with the events that flowed out, but it didn't feel prominent enough that it really led to a balance within everything else. And of course, like with Whiplash and Justin Hammer, like I said, I really did enjoy their acting, but their chemistry together was just something that just didn't work. It seemed like they were trying to go for something where they're sort of at a feud against each other. They don't work together, but it sort of didn't work for me personally, as it just created a dynamic that didn't feel like they were meant to be together. They didn't work together well because they really didn't even, Justin Hammer really didn't even know the plan that Ivan Vanko was going for, and so it really felt off with what it was going for. And so because of that, like, some of the structure of the film just feels a little messy. And going on to Don Cheadle as War Machine, he doesn't feel as much like the buddy and friend of Tony Stark. They just never seem to get it right within this film until like the end but that's more with War Machine and Iron Man. It doesn't feel like a Tony Stark Rhodey relationship where they're best friends like they sort of presented in the first Iron Man, and they seem to never have gotten it right throughout the rest of the films. But I still feel his performance is good, but the chemistry isn't quite on point to what Robert Downey Jr. had with Terrence Howard as Rhodey. Robert Downey Jr. with the rest of the cast didn't seem to quite fit as well with what the chemistry was between all the characters, who they were supposed to be, how they really meshed well together, and it felt a little off going into what it was. It was still good enough, but not quite as good as what I felt with the characters in Iron Man 1. And then also there's a sequence where Iron Man was drunk at his birthday party. They're having all this weird discussion, and Iron Man even cracks pee jokes. He's in his Iron Man suit, and it's just really an odd choice. And then that leads to the banter between him and War Machine. Rhodey's first appearance in the War Machine suit is fighting Tony Stark because he wouldn't stop the party, and it just creates sort of a bad taste in my mouth. Just really odd first appearance of the War Machine, honestly. So overall, while the bad moments were not just so great, the good moments were prominent enough to make it at least mediocre to good, and I have to rate this film simply 6.3 out of 10, and those are just my personal thoughts on this film. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it down in comments below. Was it good, was it bad, or do you agree with me where it's somewhere in between that mesh? So make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, and I'll be back for more movie reviews, rankings, and more.